Good morning, and thank you for joining us for the final session of Seniors4Change, which has been a series of discussions on health and positive aging, which have occurred every Thursday for the last few weeks at 11 a.m. These programs are brought to you in partnership with the Hamilton Council on Aging and the GERAS Centre for Aging Research, with funding from the United Way. Did I say that correctly, GERAS? Is that good pronunciation?
GERAS.
GERAS. Okay. GERAS. GERAS. The GERAS Centre for Aging Research with funding from the United Way. My name is Clarissa. Welcome, and I'm a programmer with the Hamilton Public Library. I'll mostly be in the background today moderating the session, which is about safety in the home. Just a note that we will be recording the session and we may share it on YouTube or other social media platforms. For anonymity, you can submit any questions you have to the chat window, which you open up just by hovering with your mouse over the screen. You should be able to then locate the chat window on the right-hand side of the screen. It is my pleasure to introduce our health professional educator today. Our presenter is a retired physician, Frances Lester, and backing Frances up, who you may or may not see, is Anne Pizzacala, who is a retired nurse practitioner and board member with the Hamilton Council on Aging. Welcome, Frances and Anne, and welcome everyone attending today's session. I give it over to you, Frances.
Well, good morning, everyone. We'll discuss today strategies for keeping independence, particularly in relation to home safety, on this last presentation in the series that Clarissa has described to you. Again, I would like to acknowledge the involvement of the Hamilton Council on Aging and the Geriatric Education and Research in Aging Sciences, GERAS Centre at McMaster, in the development of this program, and also to thank the Hamilton Public Library for supporting and helping us in providing this presentation through the library system, and this morning in particular to Clarissa for her help with this particular session. This acknowledges the individuals who initially developed this teaching module, which we're going to present and discuss with you today. So the agenda for this morning's session is particularly focused on staying at home as we age, maintaining the independence we'd all like to have, with also a focus on safety in the home. We know, all of us, that Canadians are living longer in recent decades, into much more advanced ages. In fact, if you're now around 65 years old, your life expectancy may well be into the late 80s. And when people are surveyed about their living arrangements, most people will say they'd rather stay in their own home and stay independent for as long as possible. This, however, does require thinking ahead. It does require some planning as to how we might manage if our abilities or our physical capacity should change over the years that are to come. Are we thinking of living in our own home for another 20 years, 10 years, or 3 years? Just consider your own situation. We're going to look at this subject from the point of view of certain things mentioned in an excellent Government of Canada booklet, which is easily available online or in paper, which gives a checklist of the things we really ought to think about if we plan to, as we said before, age in place. This document can be easily accessed on any search engine by typing in Aging in Place -Canada, or by typing in the more complicated www address, which is on this slide. So in summary, from those other points, here's some points to think about in a checklist sort of way as you consider staying in your own home as you grow older. First of all, do I feel safe there in this house or in general in the neighborhood? Do I know how to protect myself from the sort of frauds that come on the internet or the phone or in other ways, sometimes to the door, to seniors, in terms of illegitimate advertising and that sort of thing, and financial fraud? Do I know that such a thing as senior abuse exists and how to prevent it? And this can be emotional and financial as well as physical. Do I understand the risks of falling and how to help prevent it? And have I at any time considered an emergency response system, particularly if I live alone or don't know my neighbors very well, or people who might be checking on me? Within the home, is this a place where I would not be isolated in my older years? Am I close enough to essential services, to my friends, to my family, so that I would not become isolated? The financial aspects are, of course, very important and something that also has to be considered. Do I still have a mortgage that is too much for my age range, or is the rent higher than I could afford as I grow older? Am I able to cover things like renovations which might be required to make my surroundings safer? And would I be willing to put finances into such renovations? Another important point, maintaining independence sometimes is dependent on paying other people to help us with things we can no longer easily do ourselves. And are we not only able financially, but willing to pay for things like house cleaning or yard maintenance in order to help us stay in our own homes? Another point which we all need to consider, is that even though right now we're living with a spouse or other family members, if I were to be alone in the future, could I manage this house or apartment on my own? And do I recognize the safety risks? I'll just mention here that many of us have lived in the same place for years or even decades. We stop noticing, or we automatically adjust to any problems that we have. Sometimes if our personal situation has changed, it may be useful to have an external observer, like an occupational therapist, have a look at safety risks in the home with a fresh eye and point out to us the things that need to be adjusted. Transportation is a huge issue. So many of us have been dependent on driving, and that has influenced where we have lived over the years. Although we should mention that maybe 1 in 5 people over the age of 65 or 70 in Hamilton, in fact, don't have a driver's license. But suppose we could no longer drive, are we able to live in the same environment, in the same place as we are now? Have we looked at other means of transportation? For example, learn the bus routes or know about how easy it is to travel by taxi in our present situation. This is really extremely important because one of the biggest things that helps us to maintain health as we age, to maintain our independence, is that we're able to maintain our social contact and we don't become isolated. And we thought about the cost. Maybe it's better not to try to rent a car and to find other means of transportation in terms of costs. Do we know about delivery services for essentials like groceries? Would we be willing to use them? Maybe in the winter when it's hard to move around. So these are important points to go over as we consider uh, aging in place. Again, to review the keys to staying independent into the older years. First of all, physical activity. Remain physically active at least 150 minutes of moderate exercise per week. Maintaining muscle strength will help prevent falls, help us to function in our usual environment. Extremely important in maintaining independence. Staying mentally fit was discussed, I think, last week in our session on cognitive changes and ability in aging. This is also of paramount importance of maintaining independence. A healthy diet, of course, and regular medical checkups. In particular, I would mention the necessity of a regular medication review with your health provider or your pharmacist to ensure you are not taking medications you don't need, or there's unfortunate interactions between any of your medications. This regular review is extremely important, as are attention to dental, hearing, and vision capacity, which we mentioned also in previous discussions in these sessions on healthy aging. And last but not least, so important wherever we are living as we get older, that we write down wishes for health decisions if for any reason we are not competent, either temporarily or permanently. That our family or close associates know these wishes. This is reassuring for both sides, for ourselves, that the way we want to be cared for will be attended to, and for our loved ones who will feel more confident that they are doing what we would have wished in terms of those kind of circumstances. It's very important. Along with, of course, updating things like wills and powers of attorney, remembering that there's two different kinds of powers of attorney, that for medical care and that for financial circumstances. Go on to a specific issue which is of paramount importance to people in their senior years. Falls. Falls are a major threat to maintaining independence. It's estimated that even every 10 minutes somebody falls in the province of Ontario as a senior. And we tend to forget, although so many falls are result maybe in bruising or uncomfortable aches and pains from which we recover quickly, some result in life-changing injury. These injuries are particularly fractured hips, fractured vertebrae, i.e. backbone, excuse me, and head injuries. Recent statistics in the province of Ontario from 2019-2020 estimate there are as many as 13,000 hip fractures in Ontario in a year. And what we often forget is that as many as 1 in 5 seniors who fracture a hip will die within the first year after that fracture of various other complications or surrounding illnesses. Another 1 in 5 lose their previous independence after a fractured hip. And amongst the remaining 60%, quite a few become dependent on walking aids, which may mean they have to change their living arrangements. So it can be a major contributor to the loss of independence. So let's look at some statistics about falls. This is an old data from the World Health Organization in the 90s, but almost certainly is similar today. This is data about people over the age of 70 living in the community, in their homes. And as you see, just over half of falls occur outside the home, where of course we have less control of the environment. But it's important to notice that close to half happen in the home, where we do have some control of the surroundings. Looking at it from a point of view of people over the age of 65 in Canada, this was a study of hospitalizations related to fall injuries. And again, half of these injuries occurred outside the home in the sort of circumstances which I listed here on the left. But again, notice that half of them happened in the home. So what activities have been noted to be related with falls in people over the age of 65? Interestingly, we all associate falls with trying to navigate on snow and ice in the wintertime, but that was only 16%. Walking on other surfaces contributed a very large proportion. In other words, maybe irregularities in the sidewalks, slippery floors, difficulty seeing things like irregularities or steps, etc. Very significant proportion. And another significant proportion, 13% going up or down the stairs. That's very high when you consider what percentage of our time we spend going up and down stairs. I don't think any of us spend 13% of the day going up and down our staircases. So that's a very significant point. I think I do want to mention in relation to this information that, of course, as demonstrated here, the environment is very important in terms of predisposition to falls, but the other things which contribute are personal factors, which we alluded to in the previous discussion. Muscle weakness could contribute to falls. If a person has had any neurological problems, maybe a previous stroke from which there's been good recovery, but still some issues with maybe balance or strength. And again, come back to the issue of vision. It's so important to have one's glasses up to date, to be conscious of any visual problems such as depth perception that one might have. The issue of dizziness on rapidly standing up is another one. For example, getting up quickly from bed to answer the phone or go to the washroom in the night might result in dizziness, which contributes to a fall in those circumstances. And even details such as footwear, inappropriate slippers on stairs, or loose clothing that we can trip over, all these things can contribute, along with the environmental factors that we notice here, to falls. The other factor, of course, we mentioned a few minutes ago, medication review, and another one, of course, is not trying to ambulate when under the influence of alcohol, which can definitely influence balance and contribute to falls. So I'd like to break now for questions. If any of you have any questions about what we've mentioned so far, please let us know those, and we'll come back to look at some other specifics of home safety.
Frances, I don't think there are any questions right now. We can give another minute or two just to see.
Okay.
But nothing looks like it's being written.
Frances, I have a question. It's Anne. Are there
Yes.
are there any plans to put? We used to have falls prevention programs out there for people to attend, and I'm wondering if anybody is going to be starting any online locally.
That's an excellent question. I actually don't know. I'm sorry. Yes, you're right. There were frequent falls prevention sessions organized by places like people like the VON and various seniors residences, which included, assessment of individual predisposition to falls and exercise programs to improve balance. I don't know if any of those are online. I'm sorry.
Okay.
We should check that out. I agree.
Yeah, we'll check that out. And it would be a good thing to apply for one of the new grant funding opportunities as well.
Yes, because it's a really important aspect.
Yeah. Okay, thanks.
In maintaining independence. And then I might mention here that having a fall also, in a sense, contributes to more falls because it's very unsettling. I mean, I have fallen. It's very unsettling to fall. And so you become rather tense, and that probably predisposes you to another one. So that's another aspect where education or some sort of support of the kind that Anne is mentioning about fall prevention is so important. So shall we go ahead and discuss the certain aspects of home safety then? And have an opportunity for questions at the very end?
Sounds good to me.
Okay. We shall carry on.
That sounds good.
So let's look at particular areas in the home, remembering, as we've reviewed, that about half of all falls among seniors do happen within the home, where hopefully we have a little more control over the environment and its safety. All the entrance. Let's have a close look at our entranceway. Obviously, a railing is important on stairs, which needs to be properly anchored. The edges of stairs should be well maintained and easily visible. Lighting is very important. Let's remember what we mentioned in previous ones of these sessions, that people over the age of 60 or 65 require almost 3 times as much lighting to see clearly as people in their teens or 20s. Things like a motion light at the door can be extremely useful in helping at the entranceway and to find the lock and so forth. And of course, keeping walkways free of ice and snow in the winter and sanded or salted if necessary is of paramount importance. Now, living rooms. Too much furniture, too cluttered, too close together is a risk factor for falling. As one can notice in this diagram, scatter rugs are another huge problem in terms of predisposition to falling. It's so easy to trip over one or have one slide from under one's feet. And if they're going to be used at all, they should be thoroughly anchored. It's important to avoid things like extension cords on the floor, and it's also very important that light switches be easily accessible at the entrance to a room. In other words, you shouldn't have to feel your way across a dark room in order to find the light switch. You should be able to reach it right at the door of the room. Furniture should be safe and should be at a height that makes it easier to rise from. And again, overcrowding of furniture is really a factor in predisposing to bumps and falls. There are various assistive devices for people with particular problems. if strength in the legs cannot be regained with exercise, with walking, with those kind of measures, then there are devices which can help one rise from a chair. There are also, as you can be seen in this picture, devices that can be put under furniture to make their height more appropriate to a person's own height. All of these things, though they might not seem very large, could certainly help in allowing a person to maintain independence in their own surroundings. Kitchens are a famous place for accidents. Floors can be slippery. There's lots of objects around the average kitchen. We can see some of the problems in this diagram. We should definitely have all the things we use on any regular basis at an easily accessible height. This might mean rearranging our cupboards or weeding out things we don't use, but climbing on stools is just not safe for most people, particularly for the elderly. There should be, as in all places, minimum clutter and avoidance of scatter rugs on the floor. Mentioned in this particular one is the subject of pets. I mean, it's wonderful to have a cat or a dog of which one is fond. But one also has to keep an eye on where they are, because they can make sudden moves, and people have not rarely been known to fall over the cat or the dog. And extremely important in a place like a kitchen to remember not to walk on the floor right after it's been washed when it's still damp. This may seem very fundamental and rather simple-minded, but these points are really important in preventing falls and maintaining independence. Lighting, as in every one of the rooms, is also crucial. There are some assistive devices we might use in the household. Well, there are various small appliances that can help you open jars if you have arthritic hands, or help you control things on a cutting board, or keep the pot from slipping. The step stool, which is pictured here, demonstrates that if you are going to use such a device, it should at least have a handle that you can help balance yourself with. But on the whole, one should avoid climbing on step stools and chairs to reach higher shelves. Keep things at a manageable height, safe height, because it is so easy to fall off these little platforms. Now we come to really a very important point, and this is one we mentioned before, that as many as 13% of serious injuries in seniors occur with falls on stairs, disproportionate to the amount of time we actually spend going up and down stairs. Stair accidents tend to be more serious than other falls, more likely to result in a head injury or a fractured hip, just because of the obvious fact that there's a change in height as well in the stairs. If one's fallen a farther distance than just slipping on the floor. The risk is up if people hurry on the stairs or try to carry heavy things like laundry up and down stairs, or if they go up and down stairs in socks or inappropriate slippers. But again, the whole issue of stairs is of particular importance, and as noted here, in older adults are responsible for a disproportionate number of the deaths from accidents on stairs. So what do we need to pay attention to when we have a close look at our own staircases? The lighting, whether or not the edges of the stairs are easily visible. Is the railing secure and solid? Is it there at all? It's not here in this diagram. Very dangerous. Are the stairs slippery? For example, painted wood can be very slippery. The importance of stairs has been considered sufficient by various public health departments of the government to have a separate list of steps which we need to think about when looking at our staircases. So again, lighting, the repair of the steps, the height of the steps. Can we see the edges easily? And is the covering well fastened? The handrail should be at a proper height, and sometimes it's better to have a handrail on both sides if at all possible. Clutter on stairs is to be totally avoided. Skip the habit of putting it on the step until you go up the next time, because you'll forget and then fall over it. Take your time on stairs. Go one stair at a time. It's worth it. You don't want to fall on a staircase. If your vision is not wonderful, or if you're wearing bifocals, this is of even more importance. To focus on each step as you go up and down. Don't try and go up and down stairs in your reading glasses, but again, I've mentioned the issue of bifocals, of which you should be particularly conscious in terms of navigating the stairs one at a time, being sure of the depth and so forth. Are there assistive devices for stairs? Well, one is various approaches to the lighting on steps, which might need to have more attention paid in maybe an older house. Stair lifts can sometimes make the difference between staying in one's own home independently and having to move to a one-level type accommodation, which is not a small prospect. And these lifts can be quite safe. They have seat belts. Go up and down a straight set of stairs, but I think there's even ones available for stairs which have a landing in the middle and change direction. Or one might need a more solid or particular type of railing, as is demonstrated in the lower diagram, and it can help one go up and down the stairs as well. And the bathroom is another place famous for falls. Most bathrooms are relatively small, close spaces that one can get stuck in, so to speak. And the furnishings in bathrooms are very hard. So injuries are not rare. Again, scatter rugs, which are unsafe, should be totally avoided. Grab bars are very important, both for getting off the toilet and for getting in and out of the bath. These should be installed in a proper professional way so that they're absolutely secure, and can help a great deal if a person's balance is not perfect or muscular strength is less than one would hope. Contribute to safety and are important to install maybe before you need them, when one is planning ahead to stay in one's own home. The bottom of the tub should have some way of making it less slippery. It should be easy to get in and out of, and various assistive devices might be required. Sometimes the simple one of putting a chair in the shower cubicle so one can shower sitting down would be sufficient to make a shower safer for the person with some decrease in their physical abilities. There's also, as one can see here, a chair-like device which can go across the tub, again to allow showering sitting down. I haven't seen the one in the upper left corner there, which helps the person clean their feet without, if they can't reach down to their foot. in the circumstances of their bath or shower. And commode extensions to make the toilet a more appropriate height, particularly maybe temporarily after things like surgery or an illness, are available and can increase the safety of a bathroom considerably. The points we might consider in our bedrooms are similar really to the living room. The whole point about clutter and unsafe carpets and scatterrugs. The particular point in the bedroom is that a telephone should be within easy reach of the bed to avoid getting out of bed quickly to answer it, or so that it's available in the event of any sort of emergency without the person having to get out of bed and look for it. Night lights are useful too in navigating at night, and some persons might need aids to get in or out of bed, and these should be considered depending on one's own personal requirements, and this is where an occupational therapist can sometimes be helpful in advising appropriate assistive devices. The bed height is an important point too, bed height in relation to the individual's own height in terms of ease getting in or out. As I said, there are assistive devices that can be quite useful in the bedroom. All these things are ways to help maintain independence and can be quite useful in maintaining function. The lamps pictured here are the kind that one can put on by swiping with one's hand instead of struggling to find the switch. And a bedside commode in certain circumstances might be required. If modifications to a home are required in order to improve safety, there are various websites and documents available to help with planning and advice. In particular, under the Canadian Mortgage and Housing Corporation, there's a lot of useful information on how homes can be made safer. And this is a resource which one can easily access. I believe those telephone numbers also are continue to be valid during the restrictions of COVID. There are also some funding supports for required home maintenance. Some of these that would apply to different individuals and to different people's circumstances are listed here. And there is an income tax credit available, Ontario tax and also federal tax, for renovations or modifications made in the home to make it safer for people living with any disability or problem, which makes those modifications or renovations necessary. And people should be aware of these and take advantage of whatever they offer. There is a document, I believe, prepared by the Hamilton Council on Aging, Age-Friendly Hamilton, which also gives some guidance in terms of considerations important in maintaining safety in the house. I'll mention briefly before we stop mobility aids. These wheelchairs and walking devices can be really very useful in helping to maintain independence if one cannot regain one's strength by exercise and other ways of addressing one's physical problems. They can improve independence because with mobility support, you can obviously move around better, go out more, and that can help also in the prevention of falls. We should remember that any walking device, starting from a cane and up to a wheelchair or a scooter, should be correctly fitted to the individual's size and shape, as well as the individual's particular mobility problem, balance problem. One shouldn't just use the walker that the next door neighbor is finished with for the moment. And they have to be safely maintained and best probably prescribed by someone like a physiotherapist or an occupational therapist who can identify the particular requirements of an individual. Walkers can increase independence, can help people move farther, either in the home or even out of the home, and in that way also improve exercise tolerance, and also decrease the isolation involved in being unable to get out and about. So that they are important in certain circumstances, and depending on your own physical abilities, maybe something to consider to help maintain independence in your own home. As I mentioned, they must fit. They must be maintained. The brakes must work. And there are various groups which can help with the funding of such devices. Short-term use might occur after, say, orthopedic surgery or cancer treatment or major illness. Those are listed on the left-hand side, organizations like CCAC and the Cancer Assistance Program, the Red Cross. Or if there's a permanent need, there are other organizations to which one can apply if there are financial difficulties in accessing such aids. Just before closing, mentioned that, of course, in this day and age, there's lots of technology that can help stay independent too. There are medical alert systems, which, of course, one has to remember to wear if one uses, which are quite helpful in alerting a helpful organization if one has an accident or fall or acute illness at home. And cell phones in that respect can also be very useful if one remembers to carry it around with one all the time. It can be extremely helpful in allowing one to call for assistance in the event of an emergency. And again, in considering ongoing independence in our own homes, we should learn about these sorts of devices and learn how to use them to improve safety. There's resources for further information. They're listed here. We've mentioned the various government references about thinking of the future, about aging in place. There's home safety assessment tools of various kinds available online or through the Canadian Safety Council. And the age-friendly Hamilton brochures we've already mentioned are another resource. So again, I would like to thank all of you for attending, and to thank the Hamilton Public Library for its support in presenting this series over the last few weeks. If there's any questions you would like to raise, please do so now.
Frances, I have a question.
Yes.
I was just going to, sorry, I was just going to say, did you say for properly fitting the mobility aids, you can either get in touch with an occupational therapist or a physical therapist? Will
Yes.
either of those? Okay.
I think either of those could be helpful, particularly, of course, a physiotherapist. But either one could assess, you know, both one's physical requirement and the requirement in one's environment in terms of safety and the use and that kind of thing.
Okay, and you
Some houses you just couldn't use a walker in, for example, you know, that kind of thing, or maybe modifications would allow you to use a walker. And so, yes, that's the sort of professional I think would help in the measurements required and in how to use such devices. Do you have something to add, Anne?
I was just going to say that places like Shoppers that sell that sort of equipment usually have a physio or an
That's what I was wondering. Okay.
or will help to liaise with what we used to call home care, and which is now the Lynn Home Care Services, to have somebody come to your house if you're not able to go out.
Okay.
To make sure that you get the proper kind of equipment and then sort out what options are out there for you. And then to adjust the actual walker and check it once you do have it to make sure you know how to use it properly and that it's fitting you correctly.
Okay, perfect. So you could go in there and they would arrange that, an in-home assessment.
Yes, or you can
Lovely.
phone and have you could ask your doctor to also make a referral, or you could simply phone into home care if you were having significant trouble with falls and mobility. You can make a direct self-referral.
Perfect. Perfect.
And their phone number is 523-8600, 905-523-8600.
Beautiful. Thank you. We have
Good.
no further questions thus far. Anne, do you have anything more to add?
No, I think that's it for now. We'll pursue our issue of online courses in this time of COVID to see what other resources we could add to this presentation.
Okay, sounds great. Sounds great. I was looking up the falls prevention. I don't see.
Yeah.
There are various things, postings, but I'm looking for the free one. I didn't see those right off the bat. So
there's one offered by Ottawa Public Health that I'm going to pursue.
Yeah. Okay. Perfect. Okay. Lovely. So we will, if we have another session, we'll announce that on our website if that's the avenue you are pursuing. But barring that, I just wanted to thank Francis and Anne for your very valuable information, and thank you to the Hamilton Council on Aging and the GERAS Centre for Aging for providing the opportunity to lend your expertise to the community. So thank you very much for both of you being here and for all of that very valuable information. I'm also going to just take this opportunity to tell everyone about a couple of wonderful programs we have on offer at the Hamilton Public Library, specifically for older adults. The first is called Young at Heart, and it meets virtually Tuesdays at 10:30. By either phone or internet for just some fun discussion and trivia and connection. The other library program is run through the city's Senior Centre Without Walls and is entirely call-in. We have story break and book chat programs on offer through that's specifically library related, and Senior Centre Without Walls offers many other opportunities for connecting over the airwaves or landlines. So thank you again for everyone coming out. And thank you for this information.